For regular videos on ancient cultures and forgotten civilizations, please subscribe.
In ancient Sumeria, from the various writings of historians like Berossus and others, and from the Sumerian clay tablets, we're able to find that there were references to 10 pre- or antediluvian kings. What does pre-diluvian mean? Before the flood, right. So they had this belief that there were 10 kings reigning before the flood. And you'll notice the numbers that they ascribed to each of the kings, the reign. Those numbers now should all be becoming familiar to you. You've seen a bunch of them already. There's 43,200, 64,800, 36. You'll notice 64,800 is presented twice, actually 3 times. The total, though, 432,000 years.
To be clear, this information was not found on any Sumerian clay tablets. It actually comes from a Christian writer named George Synkellis, who lived in the 800s CE and wrote a work in Greek called Extract of Chronography. He says he got it from an earlier Greek writer named Abydinus, who lived sometime between 100 and 300 CE, and wrote a book on the history of Assyria and Babylon. Abydinus' work has not survived, but Abydinus says, regarding this chronology, that he was quoting from a work by Berossus, a Babylonian priest. He lived in the 3rd century BCE, and his book was a history of Babylonia, which he also wrote in Greek. Berossus' work no longer exists either. Now that we have found a copy of the actual Sumerian King List in Sumerian, which is much older than Berossus, and there is some similarity, we know that Berossus probably had some copies in his time and made a translation. But if Carlson can use a translation of the actual Sumerian King List, why does he not use it? Well, let's take a look at the actual Sumerian King List. And what do we see? It's a bit different from Berossus, isn't it? This is because over the centuries, the list was copied many times and errors crept into it. Somewhere along the way it got garbled. But you see, only the later version works for Carlson, so that's what he's going with. Oh, and just so you know, the oldest version of the Sumerian King List ever found, which is nearly 2,000 years older than Berossus, has no pre-Diluvian kings at all. That's because the list of pre-Diluvian kings was invented later. And if you're impressed that a lot of the same numbers keep coming up, don't be too surprised. They are all just multiples of the number 360. Remember, the Sumerians used a sexagesimal system, and in fact, Berossus records the lengths of the reigns of these kings not in years, but in sars, and one sar, as Berossus himself says, is 3,600 years long. Therefore, every reign here will be divisible by 3,600.